Today we have a true master of animation and storytelling. Join us with this visionary director behind some of the most iconic animated superhero films of our time, including the hauntingly powerful The Killing Joke, the martial arts masterpiece Batman: Soul of the Dragon, and the genre-defining Justice League Gods and Monsters. He's not just a director, he's an architect of the stories that shape our heroes and captivate our imaginations. Sam Liu has redefined what it means to bring comic book legends to life. His unique blend of artistry and storytelling has garnered acclaim from fans and critics alike, making him a pivotal figure in the world of animation and movies. Today, we're going to deep dive into his creative process, explore the challenges and triumphs behind his most beloved works, and uncover the mindset that drives his relentless pursuit of excellence. Get ready to be inspired as we welcome the incredible Sam Liu to the Be Super podcast. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much, Derek. That was quite an introduction.
I enjoy your work and I appreciate being here. I want to jump into this now. My first question is about your most favorite work. What was it? Why is it so special to you?
That's a good question. Let me just preempt all of this just by saying I work on lower budget. So there's always struggles with creating. I feel like there's things I love about it, but then there's stuff about almost every one of them. There's things that it makes me, it's hard for me to rewatch sometimes because it's just, there's things that we didn't have time to flesh out everything. Given that, my favorite thing is the short I did for the DC Showcase Death, based off the Neil Gaiman character Death. It's probably, I think, the most different out of all I worked on. And it's interesting because it's based loosely off of a story that I did with an old friend in college when I was trying to get into the business. It's a character I never thought I would be able to do in the 90s. I just never thought like in American animation, there was a place for that. I think that was my favorite one. It's so different because there's no fighting in it. The pure psychological, it's a little bit naive. And I remember having a conversation with myself even as we were building it, right? I was just like, is this something that people are just going to roll their eyes at? But I think I finally just came to the conclusion that I'm going to go in all in on this, and I'm making it basically for my 20-year-old self. And so a lot of it's based off of some experiences that I've kind of had. And it was such a sort of a pleasure to work on. I got to work with J.M. DeMatteis, who was a comic book writer that I read his stuff when I was in high school, and just to work with him, the level of psychology. He's a character writer. And when I heard that he was available to I got excited. If I didn't get a writer of his kind of caliber, I don't think I would have even tried to do it. I think that even when we're trying to cast and stuff like that, and even like getting art direction and things like that. Jamie is one of my favorite comic book illustrators, and we works on a TV budget. I think a lot of people who aren't paying them what they're used to, but they like the strength of the story. Even with the actors and stuff like that, and some of them had mentioned whatever, like Jamie Chung, she was the voice of Death. I think she took the part because she liked the story. Jay Lee also kind of said the same thing, like as far as gets paid more to do this kind of stuff, but it's just that I really wanted to do it. When we were in the writing room, we were just talking about what should we put in here. And everybody had sort of an experience or in their past of being humiliated. And so we put just all the pieces. It was a true collaboration. Some music, like I still play that soundtrack sometimes. It's moving to me. And that's all I really wanted to do. I have a real affinity towards this. Yeah. It's what little time, what little money we had, just what we were able to make from it. It's not perfect, but I just find it really moving. I think that's my favorite. There were other ones too that were really fun to sort of work on, and I really enjoyed them.
I want to remind our audience, you did Batman Year One, which is Frank Miller. I think that speaks to what you care about most, working with good people and having an opportunity to play. It's definitely not for the money. When you approach these things, it is really about character and developing them. But where do you get that sense from? Where did that begin? Was that from studying in college or being thrown into the fire?
I just followed what I feel. Even getting in within animation, because we're talking about, because I got in the 90s. So this is TV animation. And TV animation, for the most part of the 90s, was basically about selling toys, selling products and cereal and stuff like that. Even getting in, I didn't think I was going to stay in animation for long. I got into animation because I wanted to be a comic book artist, but I was too slow. I had a recommendation.
Too slow?
My drawing was really slow. I had a recommendation from an art director at Richmond. He was a teacher at college. He said, I would recommend any artist to go into animation for at least 2 years because you have to draw things that you wouldn't normally draw. Your speed will pick up because the field is demanding. I got in thinking I would be out, but I ended up falling in love with storytelling. I knew we're making cartoons for kids to sell toys and product. In my mind, it's like things going back to the Death character. I was an emo kid. I credited my English teacher when I was in high school because I was in advanced English. So we have to read a lot of classical books and write essays about it. And that was something that fascinated me, especially when you're trying to dissect basically what the story is about. Character and what is the story saying? What is the theme or point of the story? How do all these characters reinforce your argument or your point? That always fascinated me. I remember in the 90s, they never wanted to connect stories. They wanted one-off ones. And this has to do with business, syndication and things like that, where they want to have a story that you can see one episode and it's contained. And they don't have to connect because it's a lot harder when they have to make sure that on Monday they connect episode 1 and then 2 needs to connect and 3 needs to connect and 4, blah, blah. They can just play whatever they want to play. And that's like how they want it. And I remember hearing that's not what kids want. Kids don't want complex relationships. They just want funny things or explosions. I never understood that because as a kid, even the cartoons I watched, most were Japanese. I always felt deeply. I remember when people die or sacrifice, these big emotional things made me cry or feel injustice. I was a comic book fan, the best from the 80s and 90s, the journey of the hero. I thought I would eventually move on from animation. But I remember when I was in college, just seeing Batman the Animated Series with Tim and stuff like that. And I felt, wow, these stories are really moving, complex character kind of things. So those are the movies that touched me. Like junior high school. I've always been interested in that stuff. Speaking of year one, I can't take all the credit because I co-directed it with Lauren Montgomery. It was great working with her. But we used to laugh because we were the 2 rotating directors on the direct-to-video stuff at Warner Brothers. And she was a huge princess Disney kind of person. She was like a huge Sailor Moon fan and the Disney princesses. And I'm a kind of an emo kind of guy. We would just laugh about how if they knew who was actually making these movies that they like or whatever. I'd be like, oh, a princess person put her in like this emo guy.
That's what I love about you. You're so humble, but honestly, actually, the action in all of these are really great. And I think people love them for it too. The action is good. And it seems like in your body of work, it's like you're the go-to guy for adult themes. I couldn't show this to my 8-year-old. I threw on year one. And then the moment he's trying out his being Batman before he puts on the costume, I was like, okay, I got to shut this off. So what comics were you a fan of then? What had the most impact on you?
I think when I was younger, Chris Claremont's X-Men was really moving to me. He was so good at creating these sort of like personal relationships between the characters, but then these huge stakes that usually ends in sacrifice. I felt that was best as far as these epic sweeping kind of things that also had this extra layer. And then X-Men inherently, I think that's how it's been. It's so understood and publicized nowadays. But back in the day before the internet, it's the whole thing of mutants and humans. There's social sort of elements.
Undertone.
Yeah. Undertone critique.
Social.
Growing up in the 70s, I lived in the South. There was a lot of racism. I used to get into so many fights in elementary school. It scarred me and it shaped me. Young me, I would say in bad ways, matingly. But it gave me something I felt deeply. I feel like the Chris Claremont stories, especially with the X-Men, even with the New Mutants, just about like people having to deal with things and they're thrust upon, and then you choose to stand up for it. And especially the New Mutants, because they're about like teenagers or they have these superpowers and they don't quite work and they feel like freaks and all that kind of stuff. Like that stuff really captivated and it was totally the thing I was interested in because there was that extra element that really spoke to me. Obviously, the other thing too is like Sandman. Sandman was something that most of the comics I collected was either the X-Men kind of or things that I just like the art. But I would say X-Men and especially the Chris Claremont stuff and Frank Miller stuff. Whatever Frank Miller did, I would pick up. Sandman and X-Men were things that I kept for a long time. Like some things like I like the artists. Once they stopped, I would stop collecting the books. But there's other 3 I would consistently search out and pick up.
I think in your work, you can see how well you respect previous work. The characters remain intact, but you explore new moral challenges. Tell me about that. How does that work? Maybe start with one of your earlier works where maybe it's Batman Year One, where you have to take an anthology or a certain book of a certain character, maybe it's Batman, and then shape it into a 1-hour feature. Like, how does that work? Are you given the freedom to make those choices, or is it like you make the choices and then have to confer with a team? Like, this is where I'm a little lost. So I'd love to hear what you think. How does that work?
I think in my earlier kind of things as a director, a lot of times when I feel like a director, especially on a series, you're more like a episodic director. You're not you're only like in charge of whatever episode you're working on. The producer is the main creative in that sense. We are handed a script already that's for the most part fleshed out. By that point, we can only massage it a little bit. As far as TV animation is concerned, it isn't until you're a producer that you have more say as far as story-wise what it's going to be. So the direct-to-video stuff, which is a little bit more like movies, it's more of a long form kind of thing, like Batman Year One or Soul Dragon, we get a little more control, especially when I became a producer.
I noticed that you're a producer of a lot of these works, which is amazing. requires a lot. But what does that mean? You're working with the writer, crafting the script, giving notes, developing treatments.
I only say this because I don't think a lot of people understand we're not feature. So people compare like whatever direct-to-video came out, and how come it doesn't look like Pixar? How come it doesn't look like Spider-Verse or something? It's like we have, our budgets are so much smaller. Say like Spider-Verse has $100 million budget and it took them 3 to 5 years to make or something like that. We have a $3 to $4 million budget and we have basically less than a year to make it. We don't have the money for top-notch animation. This is the thing that frustrated me a lot. Post is never long enough. My last project, which is I still have PTSD from, is there's some key things that need to happen. I tried to do like a horror movie kind of thing. I regretted it like halfway through. There's not enough time for any of this. I don't even know why I tried this. There are key visual things that need to happen. And I did that when we were online. This is everything that's going to go, but maybe you can make small fixes. You got to shake it the next day. And key visual things weren't in place. And I was just like, okay, let's just do the down and dirty. It's not sexy, but at least visually it needs to be there. I have a love-hate for most of my projects because they feel incomplete.
So you have a love-hate for your projects because the time is short. My main question was, how do these come about? And more importantly, what's truly interesting is that while it doesn't have the big budget, what you see visually is very solid. The storytelling is another level. The characters are well developed. You feel for them. Let's say you had a year for a particular project. Does that include the script time?
I mean, the script time is like you have a month to hammer out your script. If we're doing year one, we have a source material. What story you want? Work with a writer and hammer out a story. They have 2 weeks to rough out something for you. Then you make notes and hammer it out. We have 7 to 8 weeks to storyboard it. And then we just start going into while the designers are designing stuff, storyboarders are done, then you have another couple of months to finalize like all the backgrounds and all the sort of props and all the kind of things that you need to budget. I usually have to cut 200 backgrounds and then you have to edit it down to basically whatever the length is. And then by that point, we ship it to be animated overseas. And then we wait 4 months. They only take 4 months to animate. Then it comes back to us and then we do post-production, which is probably another 2 months, maybe 3. And that's it. Then it's out. There's the actors and the recording during the script, after the script is done, whether it's storyboarding and stuff like that. You try to hammer that out, have all the stuff recorded within a couple of weeks. Then obviously when we're in post, we're editing, we're putting the different effects on it, calling retakes, stuff that doesn't look good. And even with that, we don't have enough money to get retakes. And so it's a lot of times we're just cutting stuff because it just looks bad or we edit it. I'm working with a composer. Once we get a rough cut of it, it goes to the composer and then the composer starts putting music to it. And then you got to, and so then a lot of stuff overlaps. TV animation is not really expensive. We're always working within a very small means. And so a lot of times too, there's overlap. Like I'm usually working on 2 or 3 projects at the same time. Like
what?
Building another one, and towards the tail end, I'm prepping for the next one. It's pretty rough. I burnt out pretty fast when Lauren and I were together in the beginning, working on direct-to-video stuff. We would overlap. I would work on my movie, and she might help out a little bit while she's getting her movie set up. So when my storyboard artists are done, they would jump over onto her project, and then I would start going into post on my project while she's finishing up hers. But then when I'm done with post, I'm helping her out. So we would leapfrog each other. It's almost like a midpoint thing where we keep the ball running. My later iteration of post for 1 year was the last one I did. Once I worked on more group things with a cohesive universe, there was a period where I was the only director and I was basically working with Bruce Timm and I was working with James Tucker. I had no overlap. I was basically doing all of it, which basically means I couldn't do the whole post. And whoever the producer was at the time, I would have to leave Bruce's project from the then post to start working on James's project. And then once his kind of goes to the end, I would work as much as I could. And then I would have to leave his and then jump onto Bruce's. So it was pretty rough. I was really getting burnt out. I think with stories, the beginning is always the fun part. You're reading the script and trying to connect people, identifying themes, characters, the actions and events they go through. Basically, you have a point to the adventure they're going through, whether it's a person or they're saving something. When I was younger, I would just focus mainly on the action. I would just be like, okay, they're talking. Okay, they talk. Or whatever. Like, okay, now we're going to get into the fight stuff. Let's get into the choreography. As I got older, I was more concerned about the structure of the stories, the characters, and the path. Who is the one that's changing? What are the things that they run into that create this through line? If they need to start from here, they start here intended to go this way, but end up over here. How did they end up here? Something needs to bump them to cause the change, and by the end, they become this. Those things were a lot more fascinating to me. My voice director used to hate me because we have to go through things so fast. So it's not really their fault. They're just trying to get the most interesting reads. But a lot of times in my head, at this point in the story, this is where the character is at. And their read needs to reflect their beliefs at that point. Mm-hmm. Then at a point is they're in their transition thing, and their responses and the way they speak, or especially when towards certain things, need to be in this mindset at this point. Where is it and what is the transition to get into this mindset? So they're angry all the time, not compassionate to anybody. But then at some point, something happens which causes them to be compassionate. So when they're in this middle part, they'll be compassionate, but you still see their anger. Then depending on how far they need to go, they react through the lens of compassion. Reads are really important in that kind of sense. If you're dead inside, your reads need to be dead. But then at what point do they start becoming more, I don't know, human or something like that? That's a horrible example, but it's this path and chart of events and the journey. I remember seeing a movie, and I don't really want to throw too much shade on it or anything, so I'll be very vague about it, but it was a character that was supposed to be like traumatized, and they're supposed to be like I never get emotional. I never whatever because I'm dead inside. But their reads are emotional at the beginning. But their reads are the same at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Whereas there should be a journey. As far as in the beginning, is I'm dead, so I don't get emotional about things because I'm a robot. At the end, they should arrive at this kind of place where the character is noticeably different. So it's like looking at the board of pieces, a path, and charting it. This moment, when reading lines sometimes, this line is really important because this is the moment that changes the trajectory of this character. And so that needs to like be highlighted and it needs to stand out because it's very easy to just read a script and just go, there's two people talking, so they're just gonna talk. I'm gonna shoot it like a regular talking scene. But if you play it more of what does the character supposed to be feeling? You know what I mean? I remember there's a producer that I was really picky about something when we edit it. The producer was just like, can't a diner scene just be a diner scene? It depends on what's happening in the diner. It's like if it's a murderer that's going to go into the diner to kill somebody, it needs to be tense. If it's three kids like they're just after school waiting up at the diner to do your homework and whatever like that, and one's in love, that's totally different.
If anyone watched Heat, that diner scene is still with Pacino and De Niro. That's like the most iconic face-off in a diner.
There's this one, I remember seeing with another director friend of mine, like that. And even just the way Michael Mann shot it, right? He was like De Niro, and there was the girl that worked at a bookstore, like an art bookstore. She has a crush on him. So she follows him into the diner. And the way it's shot, you know, in the beginning, because he's annoyed because he's a hitman, whatever, but she doesn't know who he is. She just kind of has a crush on him. So she's trying to they sit at the diner and she's trying to make a conversation with him. And so it's shot in a way where the camera is like behind them. So when she's talking to him, she's talking to his back, stacking from the back. So it's the back, and then the camera is here. In the beginning of the conversation, she's talking to his back. It's all shot in the back. But once she's like, I don't know why you're so rude to me. I can't exactly remember. But then she gets mad at him. And then he's just like, okay, I need to be nice to you. So it's like, fine, whatever. The camera swings over the counter to his front. That is a very purposeful directorial decision. Fascinating. It's reflecting that. I've seen, there's many films that I watch. They're just shot like talking scene and not really maximizing the camera or the composition. Compositions, I feel like, they're just like paintings, and his paintings make you feel something. What does the shot make you feel? The obvious ones are like basic storytelling examples. I love deep diving. It's like Titanic. In the beginning, it's about Titanic's sheet. So it's all these shots are about like Titanic being this gigantic thing. They're loading cars, automobiles on it. Look how big that is, or whatever. There's a tugboat before I and look how small it is. It looks like it's going to get run over by this massive ship. But then it hits the iceberg and they're stuck and the ship is sinking. The shots are so wide and it's 95% ocean. And the Titanic is this little teeny thing. But
these are the subtle things people are not noticing. You have source material, but how does it translate to movement and frame and composition is just the
a tool, and it's like in a very basic way that tool works and it serves its function. You saying that makes me very happy because a lot of people don't pick up on things like that.
Can I ask you a question about Batman Year One? He has an inner dialogue. I don't see that in all of your work, so just curious.
That's from the book, because a lot of comics there is that sort of narration, that monologue that's happening.
Yeah,
and that's just one of the sort of, I guess, decisions or struggles as far as translating from comic to animation. There's a lot of things that inherently I feel like work in comics/books that don't work in a contained film. And part of it is the pacing kind of thing. So there's certain, I think, stories that are better off in streaming because they're episodic, which allows for chapter breaks. You can have 3 episodes of the long narrative, and then you have this one chapter basically about this side thing about this. You're going to this one story of this character. You can't do that in a movie because it breaks the flow. Another thing is narration. Are you going to commit to that? The narration's got to go
whole way.
You can't just have it in the front and then it disappears. It's a little jarring. If you lean into that, you have to have narration throughout the whole thing. Not every second, but it's got to be consistent.
To establish that, you have to go with it.
But it's not as jarring for some reason.
For the story, it felt like you had to go that way for Gordon's actions because he's such a badass. How do you establish that quickly in an hour or so? Well, nice, though. It felt almost like Memento-ish. I had to do this, remember that. It really works.
Yeah, it's great because he's got this internal struggle while trying to be a good policeman. Sometimes you're not going to get that visually. Like you need the inner monologue to let the viewers understand. Like
it didn't go Sin City, and the colors are very muted. I love the style; it's very unique. I want to go to Red Sun. There's so much I could talk about. I want to talk about Red Sun just because of all the moral choices. I understand from reading a couple periodic blogs that there were changes made to the story, and I don't know the exact comic, but greatly enjoyed it. Spoilers at the end, Lex Luthor is almost the hero. You have fans that might get extremely angry at you for changing things. I think that one to me is such a work of art. I'd love to hear how you made some of those choices for the comic book.
A lot of it is about narrative and flow. In comics, there's events, and time is a weird thing because you can read it, take a break, and sometimes the flow is, you feel it in yourself. But when you make movies, there's a soundtrack because there's always momentum that needs to connect. If you just jump ideas, it's jarring and it doesn't work. It works fine if you had episodics and stuff like that. If you told a story for 30 minutes and you basically have a loose beginning to end, and you start the next one about something different, but connected later. You can't do that in a connected movie. The connections need to be more obvious so you don't lose the audience. You can lose them for a bit, but then you got to hook them back. It's like Superman, even though he lands in Russia versus America, he's still Superman. There's a goodness to him under a different set of rules. So Luthor, in a way, is that sort of that very human but flawed person. Competitive. The story is about Superman being brought up a certain way, realizing that there's a lot of dark stuff that happens and he's not really okay with it, but he's trying to fix it. And he was realizing that in order to run a country, I have to do dark stuff sometimes, the lobotomies and stuff like that. So for him, it's almost like this naive kind of, I guess if you want to call it, thing of good and evil, black and white. But he's realizing there's a lot of gray as he goes along, and he becomes almost the thing that he's like in the beginning. That's why he kills Stalin for. It's just you're doing evil things to people, and that shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, for Superman to kill is a big deal. He doesn't even do it nicely. He just tears him up. I'd love to hear what your thought process was for we're going to have Superman kill.
So to me, it's a thing where he's asked him and he got the answer. He's not going to change. He realizes the only way is this guy has to go because I cannot reason with him. He's never going to see my side. He's maybe that's a little quick and it's ham-fisted or whatever, but that's the inflection point that changes his projector. He tries to do it, but realizes he can't because there's the Batmans that are there. You're just like them or whatever. No, it's better. But they're lobotomized. That's the only way I can correct these people that are so evil. And so it becomes a thing he can't solve. But Luthor just wants to win. I'm going to do these horrible things, create this mutated man. I'm not really concerned about his humanity. All I do is want to win. And even Lois Lane is more of the audience. It's just, you're a monster. The broad stroke of it to me is like Superman wanting to do the good thing, and he believes that's happening until he realizes there's this whole dark underside, and he's just, we can't do that. And then it's just, we have to do that, and you just don't understand. And it's just, no, it can happen if you want to do it. So he just tries it, and he realizes you have to do these things because people are going to have different, not everybody's going to fall in line or be good. He becomes like Stalin in a way, and so he's lost that. But his goodness infects Luthor. Luthor becomes almost saved and does good things with this power. It's just money. In the comic book, it's a thing where it projects into the future, which creates this
loop. Yeah.
We have to design a couple of shots of iterations of the future, these design things on screen for 2 seconds each, but it requires a person to design it, paint it, all that stuff just for 2 seconds. So it became a budgetary projection. A lot of times we take backgrounds from other shows, like somebody's house or something that's not too important, a road or something like that, because it's just our budget and our schedule.
Like a stock photo.
As long as it looks in this style, we use it because somebody has to design a whole new, especially crowds. But I just thought it was like, and this is just my thing, and people can slam me for it, but I always thought that was an interesting gimmick of how Luthor's generations of people become basically Jor-El is a descendant. And then when Krypton Earth, which is Earth, destroys itself, it's really future Earth. He sends Kal-El, the baby, into the past. As a concept, it's clever, but as a concept, I was just kind of like, I don't know if I like that you're in a locked loop that this is going to keep, but maybe that's the point. You know what I mean? At the time, I thought maybe it's not. Speaking about it now, I think it's easy to say there's good and evil. But then when you're dealing with people, let alone like many people, it's hard to basically have a clear road to kind of go forward that everybody's going to agree on. It gets really muddy and gray, and we're kind of seeing that in politics and all that kind of stuff too. That it's just, sometimes you're just like, what the people want is maybe not even good, yet you're in charge and you have to drive this bus. And the thing that I wanted to like end on is kind of like Superman is still this simple quote at the end. It's this thing where I can't solve it, so I'm just going to fade into the background. I'll be around, but I'm just going to fade into the background because it's maybe the world is better if they don't lean on me to solve things.
Superman's one of my favorite characters. I still have this Christopher Reeves picture in my mind of him returning returning the flag to the president.
Sorry, I've been away so long.
Follows that character path where he goes off, he's good, then he goes off in the wrong direction, then he's back. That's really nice. It almost feels like there's some practicality to what you have to produce, but also you're still adhering to who that character is.
As far as the way production goes, you get handed the script and you got to go. So you don't have a lot of time to digest this and push things around. It usually takes me a while. The voice acting is so important. A lot of times I don't really get the core of the film until I hear the voice acting. So I'm reading it, trying to find a vision of it or what this thing is trying to be and making sure things are highlighted. So the point of it is apparent because sure, maybe you can tell me, but I just feel like sometimes when building stuff and you don't quite know what it is, like these points you lost very easily. It's just not shot or it's not, you're not slowing down enough for that moment to resonate with people. I find this a lot of like death scenes. It's like important characters, they're dying, they're in the middle of a fight and they die, but you never sit on it long enough. They die, you look and they're dead and you move on. That doesn't resonate with you. So to me, it's a thing of, is this a moment we should be slowing down for or not? I'm trying to find just the character arcs and the moments that are important. When you get there, that I confuse sometimes, or it makes me go, oh, how much do we slow down? Maybe you don't need to slow down. The edit thing is fun, but sometimes nerve-wracking.
You care so much about how well it's told. I struggle over that. Some things are beyond your own imagination. And so I might spend months like, oh, what's that going to look like? Or how's that going to turn out? What is this really about? And someone solves it for me. Like there's like a visual effect of this inner cave in one of my movies. I looked at so many references and I wrote down different ways. In the end, I communicated it to the VFX supervisor and he came up with something that was something that I feel like that serves the story. That's not what I created, but it's something that really serves the story and will delight people.
There's some movies that I watch and sometimes there's these moments where just like, everything comes together and it brings me to tears or it makes me feel, what is that to me? I'm always trying to figure out and create that combination somehow. Oh, there's something you just touched on back there, but it's no big deal. Then, I touched this thing over here. Then when that moment comes and you're like, oh, that thing you touched comes into mind. And then you realize it's all connected. This moment makes it so much more powerful.
Yeah. How do they do that? It was premeditated to make you feel that way. That's the craft of that creator or visionary. Ting's Speech is one of my favorite movies because it hit me emotionally. It's upbeat and he's quirky and suddenly you're just like, oh my gosh. There's another movie. I was bawling on the plane and then the stewardess came up to me, she's like, are you okay? I'm like...
That's what you want to do as a filmmaker though.
Yeah, oh, totally. It made you feel...
Yeah, you're like, I'm the man. Yeah.
Let me bring up one more project. I feel like this is, but I want to bring up one more project and hopefully I can bring you back because I want to talk about all your other work here. The way I found you was Soul of the Dragon. That's where I started diving into all your work. Holy cow, this guy has done all this amazing work and then he's able to bring Bruce Lee to life with Batman. And then there's elements of Enter the Dragon. Tell me about how you brought that to screen. Was that difficult? Was it a struggle?
That is a Bruce Timm project. It's like Bruce's sweet spot of the 70s. He's in love with the 70s. He's the one that sort of made that movie happen. I love that stuff, obviously, because it's when I grew up, all those like Shaw Brother movies and those black exploitation movies and stuff. Like I was very young when those things were on TV. I remember when Bruce was looking, this is our next project. We're being in the room with him and Jim Krieg, the head writer. And it's like, I'm Asian. They're like, yes, you are. I'm just like, I just ask, please, if we could just be respectful. And so they're just like, oh, for sure. Richard Dragon is the main character, actually. But because we have to make into a Batman story just for sales and all that kind of stuff. But so really, this is a Richard Dragon. He's never going to be a sidekick. He's never in some, okay. And so I have to give credit to Bruce. I feel like that's a narrow thing. I want to do that. I just don't know if people would want to do that. Those are the ones, I think, just as an artist, as a creative, towards the end, in the beginning of the direct-to-video, sort of more traditional, really close to the source material and the sort of typical journey of the hero kind of stories of in superhero. But I feel like as we got later and later, especially with Bruce, I feel like we've done so many. I just want to do something different. It's a bit more interesting. I'm not as big of a fan of the 70s as Bruce, but Bruce Lee was the hero growing up in the South. This doesn't quite capture it, but just sort of a lot more representation. It's been accepted a little bit more now than in the 80s. As Asians, we never really had that leading man role model. And Bruce Lee was that. Many have said it, but it's true for, I guess, people of less of that generation. But I always knew that it was loaded. Maybe that's me being older. I don't know. It's just that feeling of kind of like nobody else is going to understand this, how this is important to me because I'm the minority. Bringing something like that at that point in my life is understanding that that might not be for everybody. So there's people in my life that are exceptional to me. They're bold enough, like Dwayne McDuffie. I was fortunate to work with him. He created Milestone for DC, an all-black superhero side universe. They're bold enough to put that in the public eye. It's like, people aren't going to understand you. It's not going to be marketable as a mass media thing. I don't know, as much as flack like Bruce Timm has gotten throughout the years, he's changed a lot, even for me knowing him and working from afar, working with him closely for over 10 years. There's a lot he was trying to do, especially toward the later part of it is, and even a death short or whatever. Like I remember being in this sort of like meeting room with home video and DC, and them asking, what do you want to do with this? And I was like, there's the brand story, which I pitched. I was just like, but this is the artist story is the story that I really want to do. And I feel like that's much more on brand as far as the Sandman is concerned. And Bruce is in that meeting and they were just like, oh, I like that other story. Bruce is just like, what do you want to do, Sam? And I was like, I want to do the artist story. And he's just, you should do the artist story. So without his voice, I probably would have ended up doing the other story because that's the one that all the business people wanted me to do. But Bruce is like, no, do the one you want to do. And so I'm not a big enough voice to convince people, but Bruce is. I think he gets a bad rap for a lot of things. She's really championed a lot of things. But this is something that I don't know, like I would have had the balls to pitch. But this is him, and he wanted to do this, and all these things. It's not Bruce. There's a line in it because it's just I don't want to be a revisionist about things because it's things I grew up with and stuff like that. And there's a line where like there's this sort of gruff bouncer guy in the beginning. So okay, whatever, Charlie Chan, whatever. Originally the line was Chinaman, and they're like, we should change that. I was like, no, I think we should keep Chinaman because I don't want to hide from how ugly it was. But they're like, maybe change it to Charlie Chan. I like that they're delving into things. One of the things you mentioned was Gods and Monsters. That was such a twisty thing. Sometimes we need more time for this. There's a lot to navigate, but we just didn't have enough time. The ending felt like it could have been better, but we just ran out of time. We just said, I couldn't be bored like a lot of the stuff. We just had to tweak little parts and fix out sections and stuff like that. But I don't know. I just like this. I like stories, and I think I'm in a minority because I feel like, especially like Superman, I think like the audience just likes a very simplified, straightforward Boy Scout Superman story. That's like the Mount Everest for them. They don't want a complex Superman. I like the story to move around a little and not just be this thing saying the same thing and proving it. Do you know what I mean? Like something with a challenge, a little bit of twist, a little bit of maybe something that on that path, it'll say something that's a little bit different about them. There's another facet that you can expose by exploring that path. I'm all for it, but it's tough when you don't have time to explore it. Sometimes it gets away from us and that makes it unwatchable. Some things unwatchable for me, but I remember the idea while we were doing it. And I still feel like the idea was good.
Yeah. There's always going to be constraints and parameters. And that's why I'm just blown away by anybody who can manage all the legacy you have to adhere to, tell a good story and do something new. It's like putting a weighted vest and running an ultra marathon and still turn something in that's to this day still there playing what people can watch and enjoy it, and it stands the test of time. I really enjoyed the way you portrayed Richard Dragon. He's really in the essence of Bruce Lee, and he's not comedic, he's not a sidekick, he's really stands out as the lead, even though it goes through that Batman guise. That's the entry point into the story, but it's truly about him.
I have to give credit to my board artist. The choreography is really good. I'm thankful for those board artists. They did cool action, car chases, fighting styles, the voice acting. Like Mark DeCosta is like, he has a kind of a gentle voice. I just feel like it's a really good casting call with him. Oh, he's been great at that. So I just love the casting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And martial artists too.
That's part of it. You're just getting these 90s fight sort of actors.
Did you cast those? Did you cast them? How did that process come about?
We have a casting director. He usually comes in with a list. So we have a meeting in a room and we sort of look at his list first. He has a high percentage of selecting good people for parts and things like that. So,
and then you ultimately, though, select them, though, as the director. Say, yeah, that's...
Yeah, I mean, me and Bruce, because Bruce is such a big name. We will say who we think, and a lot of times we just kind of agree on things. But then a lot of it comes to who takes the part, who doesn't. In year one, originally...
Bryan Cranston
originally turned down the part because he thought it was just a cartoon. He didn't normally do voiceover, but he read the script and was like, wow, this is different. Let's do it. I guess I shouldn't name some of the ones that, like, sometimes like your first pick, it doesn't, I guess it's just like any other kind of album. It's just like sometimes like your first pick is not available.
Yeah. I love that conscious choice to choose martial artists as actors for that particular episode. Bryan Cranston was fantastic in year one. Let me ask you about, I know you worked with Nathan Fillion, who was he was Green Lantern and James Gunn's Superman. But what was it like working with him? And I know you got some stories behind that as well.
I would say like 99% of the actors that we had worked with. Yeah, they're all like just great and like fun people. Yeah, Nathan is great.
You probably interacted with a lot of the live action DC actors as well.
Since the James Gunn universe, that was a mandate that live action actors who play characters that are played in live action will also do voices. But yeah, I don't think it was a structure pre-James Gunn.
I love your Wonder Woman, by the way, too. I love the way in the work, I love the way you portrayed Wonder Woman. They're always so strong yet romantic. Actually, all the female characters are really good. Lois Lane, oh my gosh. I love seeing them like that. Most of the characters are not as chatty. The dialogue is strong and their characters makes you who they are quickly. Maybe that's a tone thing. Your tone across your work is that a lot of the storytelling is in the action decisions they make, less about dialogue.
These things go fast. One of the things that I feel like sometimes we miss things. Killing Joke, I think that there's certain characters that we entirely missed what they were saying. For the most part, it becomes a thing where, a lot of times how quickly it goes, you have to pick and choose your spots. It's like there can be 100 things wrong, but you can only touch 10. I try to prioritize the moments that are important in what is being said in the dialogue. I'm trying to feel my way through it as I'm reading it. The priority is the main characters, the important characters. Sometimes the side characters, I'm just like, I don't know, they're just saying stuff and it's fine. But there's certain things in each of the movies like dialogues where we're picky about what they're saying. Even if they have a few lines, that's reinforcing their characters.
Yeah. I feel like in my general sense, you're also like an employee. It's not like you're project by project. So I can imagine even behind the scenes, I could make a comment on this area, but then that person will get angry at me because I had to ask them 5 times for different things. And you're like, maybe I'll let it go. If I don't let it go, then it won't be.
There's ones where we've had fights and I've lost. There's still lines in certain ones where I'm just like, I think that line that I wanted was better. You know what I mean? Because I think this undermines the character.
I'd like to ask you one final question. I hope people will subscribe and we'll have more conversation. I feel like we're just hitting the surface. With our industry, what's missing is the opportunity for somebody consistent and able to deliver time and time. I feel like a lot of times we're just looking for something completely out there, extreme, because that's what gets the eyeballs. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. That's something I struggle with. My track record is getting it done in a certain amount of time and working efficiently. I feel like you get less notice for that and there's more of if blow something up or extreme point of view or things like that in movies.
It's a great question. I think it's definitely a veteran question, I feel like. But I don't know. I guarantee you know this already. A lot of people, especially as artists, you have these dreams about and ideas of kind of like how if you just do good work, you build it, people will come. The machine of business is always big. And it's a lot of times I feel like it's not really informed. And I think a lot of times too, even though they want to do focus testing and this kind of stuff, but what they want is what's going to explode for everybody. What's that investment? It's going to capture the zeitgeist, like the story of Star Wars when Lucas had to finance half of it himself. Nobody wanted to buy it because it wasn't popular. Nobody could see the vision. They always wanted to do the safe thing. Who's made a serious science fiction movie? Nobody. Science fiction movies are all B-movie, schlocky things, even superhero stuff. I don't know if Burton is the guy. Nobody wanted to do like a serious superhero thing. They always want to make it campy or something like that. And they've tried, but that's always the sort of default because it's for kids and superheroes are supposed to be funny. Star Wars now obviously is like one of the hugest franchises in history, in entertainment history. Yet in the beginning, nobody wanted to finance it because nobody could see the vision because they're focus testing whatever says basically this is a bad thing to invest in. So I always feel like sports or whatever, they're always looking for the next superstar and maybe hype is more valuable than skill. And so the draft is always more interesting because the draft is always speculation of potential. I've been watching these things about directors that have been canceled or in director jail. A lot of them are next up and coming directors until they make a bad movie. And then you do 2 in a row or then you're in director jail. Basically, it's a scary place to be. It's like everybody wants the spotlight, but the spotlight, I feel, can be very scary. I feel like the odds are you're going to fail unless you're lucky enough to have this crazy batting average. Like even the Camerons of the world who have a high batting average, he may or may not be as like the hot relevant guy or whatever because there's so many new people. So I feel like sports or whatever, a lot of times people are willing to go back into the draft hoping to strike gold.
No, it's interesting. Our industry is very star driven and unavoidable, but can there be a Moneyball system heading that way with technology? I don't know, where it's team and consistency. They did that with the Red Sox. I don't know.
With Superhero, the Marvel thing, when it was at its height, they invested in a long-term thing. We're going to do X amount of movies. Pre-Disney, Marvel was almost bankrupt. Like Iron Man it's like Hail Mary, basically. Like they're just going for it. And so they didn't have anything to lose. And they were just trying to prop up their IPs, make money, and committed to making movies about their heroes. Whereas DC, that investment is too long reaching as far as a commitment is concerned. They make one, and if it does, okay, maybe make another. They don't want the commitment of, okay, we're going to commit to a long-term kind of thing. We're going to spend some money and test this one out. And if it doesn't work, then we're done until the bad taste runs out. And then maybe we'll try 10 years, 20 years later or something like that. For Marvel to commit to that is a bold move that most big companies are never going to do. Not everybody working in video games. This one producer broke it down for me very succinctly, which is just if you think a big company wants to do R&D and like test something, you're absolutely wrong. He's saying what they want to do is for somebody else to test something. And then if it proves big hit, we're going to come in after. They never want to be the first. They want to find safe gambles, basically. Yeah, I don't know.
They're trying to be second movers. They're Pepsis.
Yeah, and they want to be able to move off stuff if it's not going their way. Let's give it time to grow an audience or something like that.
I think our industry is heading towards a creator-led, actually, and across other industries too, even across finance and technology. I think creator-led companies are just where we have to go and where it will go.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's why what you're doing, I think it's great. Because I feel like the turn on is, I don't know, at least a lot of creators that I've talked to, how do you create your thing and not having to use like a big studio? Or how do you have to commit to basically what they're going to offer you kind of thing? Because if you work in the big studio kind of thing, you basically have to sell like most all the rights to the IP for them to fund it. I've run into more people that are trying to figure out how do you do it on your own terms, I think.
If you could do a movie, what genre would it be?
I don't know, because I like fantasy, I like sci-fi, but I like quiet movies too, but it's a combination of stuff, obviously, because it's got to me, it has to be like character driven, meaningful on a sort of emotional, humanistic level. And I feel like just getting older now, all that kind of stuff. I'm trying to find projects that sort of speak to me. And that's obviously the sweet spot. But I think as long as it's character based, the genre is not as important. What is the journey of the character, basically? And if it's something that sort of speaks to me.
Very open, which is great. And then you have a very diverse portfolio of stories and different characters.
I'm not as interested in pure fight choreography, special effects, or just explosions and all that kind of stuff. Like those are all just tools, as if that explosion enhances basically the experience or what's going on with the character. If that fight is going to be the conflict, but it ultimately is about what are you fighting for? Why is this fight happening? What is it preventing you from doing? So that's fine, but it's not the main point of stories to me anymore.
Your sense of morality is very balanced and fair. I'm curious where you think that comes from. Does it come from the comic books you mentioned, your family? Where do you think?
I think it starts going into this whole other conversation. I'll try to just bridge it. I feel like it's just getting old. When you're young, things are black and white. There's a way to do it and a wrong way to do it. The older you get, there's things you're trying to uphold or leave it. And there's things within the line or outside that's more black and white. And I think as you get older, things are much more gray. Whereas I feel when I was younger, I'm still opinionated, but I feel like I'm less opinionated or more open to other people's point of view. And where I do get picky is, why do you have that point of view? So I will dismiss people sooner. I'm a grouchy old man now, sitting on my porch with a shotgun. But I want to hear what you have to say. Sometimes the ugly side of it, which I need to work on, is I'll dismiss stuff because I'm kind of like, okay, you're only in this stage of sort of something. It's stages of things like reaction, trauma, and all that kind of stuff. You know how there's stages of stuff. And so I feel like there's stages of reacting to things too. I remember being very, I don't know what you want to call it, like liberal. I went to a very liberal school, like UC Santa Cruz. There was a lot of like marches and a lot of things were happening, reparations of the people in Japanese internment camps in America, things like that. Like I was in college and things like that were happening. And it's like when stuff happens, there's the initial reaction, but then you learn more about it and then maybe your opinion changes kind of a thing. So I'm realizing maybe my first reaction is not the reaction, or let's explore more before championing something. And this is something that I adopted as far as like racism is concerned. It's like just because you say something doesn't necessarily demonize you. It's more of like intent to me. The intent is more important than actually what is being said sometimes. It's when I was in college. I remember going to a liquor store and getting a beer. And there's an older lady that was out there, cash register. And so she's like, can I see your ID? So I show her my ID. She's like, oh, I can never tell with your type how old you guys are. So that in itself is kind of racist. But I don't think she intended to be bad. She was trying to say you look very young for your age. So I let it go because I'm like, the intent is not, if you were sneering when you said it, whatever, then yeah, I'll jump down your throat. But I don't think you meant it. You're an older lady. And sometimes that's just how you are. I don't want to fight you, but I think you had good intentions. So I'm not going to take it badly. So I don't know. It's just, there's stuff that's like that. I remember being young and being very fiery about certain things. And I'm like, that's where I'm at as a stage. So I try to I don't know, I'm judging, but sometimes I identify people. I'm like, okay, you're a young person, or even you're an old person, but I feel like you're at this stage. That's why you're so angry. I don't know. I feel like
there's a lot of wisdom there. When I moved to Hong Kong, people would always ask, what's your background? Where are you from? If you knew me if I was in New York and someone asked me that, you automatically get offended. Oh, what are you trying to say? Or are you from China or something like that? And it's, yeah, no, I'm Chinese, but it doesn't really bother me anymore. It would have bothered me 20 years ago. Now it's not a big deal. I'm happy to tell you where I'm from. Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to escape your pre-programming, certainly for me.
Yeah, for sure. Everybody's flawed. Everybody's got their thing. The exploration of that's, to me, even though maybe it's not as entertaining for certain people, or they want a black and white answer. Like, I just feel like that's the very base journey of the hero. But I think my view of people now is there's so much gray out there that I like exploring that.
I enjoy the wisdom when I grew up on cartoons, let's call them like He-Man and G.I. Joe, though. I think as a kid, I picked up a lot of things that were like how to be a good person. And that's what I see in yours, and in a more adult manner, like for somebody in their teens, gains insight into what it means to be a human going through struggles. I have one last question. What would you say to young people wanting to pursue a career? What should they study or do to prepare for the future?
I've been thinking about this. I knew what I would say 10 years ago. I just feel like the way, I don't know, the economy and the world and how quickly everything is changing nowadays. No, because I just think that the opportunities are not as open as they used to be. Let me say what I would normally say 5 to 10 years ago is that I feel like, especially if you're young, if you feel for something, you should chase it. If you really love something, go for it. I feel like there's a certain point in your life you're going to have to start settling for things, especially when you're young. But I think also if you're older and you can realize that this is the thing that's like really fulfilling for me, and this is the thing that I love. Look for pathways to exploring that, because I used to say this also just to the little time that I was working in video games. I remember hearing stories about the people that are CEOs of like video game companies. Granted, this is like over 20 years ago. A lot of them started off as basically people that work in the mailroom. My recommendation was, if you love something, the job that you want, you may not get that on the first shot. Just find a way to get into that company that you want. Even if it's working in the mailroom, talk to people, learn what you need to do, being around it, understanding what's important. You can learn it. Careers and jobs with me, there's a lot of luck that's involved. You want to just basically increase your percentages for that luck to happen, kind of a thing. And a lot of it, I feel, is just, even if you're like adjacent to the thing that you're at, just get in there so you can get closer to the kind of thing, because ultimately everybody's just waiting for an opportunity. A writer, I remember like back in the day in like the 90s, where like that, he was the runner when I was working on Sony way back. And now he's one of the main writers in Law and Order. There's another guy, I remember on the Batman 2003, he was the assistant to the head writer. Now he's running his own shows. Just get in there, get as close to the thing that you want to be. And the other kind of thing that I talk about too is you'll figure things out in that journey. Like for me, I started as an illustrator. Animation was not even on my radar, but I stumbled into animation trying to get faster. I only intended to stay in animation for about 2 years, but I fell in love with storytelling. And I love storytelling more than drawing. I hardly draw now. My old comic book friends laugh at me. You used to be good. Now you can't even draw like you used to. And life is funny that way. When you're young, it's kind of like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, oh, I don't know. I'm in high school and I guess I like this. So I guess that part of life is just finding your way, and you can't find your way if you don't walk down the path. And so even if it's long, you'll figure it out once you walk down that path. The dream for everybody is your job is the thing that you actually love doing, and it doesn't a good job. Why not chase that?
Thanks a lot, Sam. It was a great discussion.
And a lot of fun. Thank you.